So good morning. Incorporate the message for Elul. So Rav Dessler refers to the confrontations, the debates between Yeshua and Hananiah, one of the greatest sages, with the philosophers of Athens. And that he did this in response to a request by the Emperor of Rome, who saw the wisdom of Yeshua ben Hananiah and wanted to find out whose wisdom is greater, the wisdom of the Greeks or the wisdom of the Hebrews, of the sages. He saw that Yeshua ben Hananiah was such a wise man. He said, our wisdom is greater. So he challenged him. He said, I'll give over any expenditure that you should go and meet with him. So it would appear that in his time, some of the most advanced philosophers of Athens, they also debated things in public, but their major sessions, where they tried to analyze problems, were held in a secret place. No one from outside was allowed in without having been approved entirely. And also, they used secret languages. And this is all described in this most exotic and unusual confrontation between Yeshua ben Hananiah and these sages. There's a whole discussion amongst the commentators. Did he really meet them, or is it just a concept? I'm not just going to bring the whole episode, because there are many stages to it. But anyway, when ultimately he met up with them, he was allowed in. I got in. And then they tested him. He said, you're a wise man, you think wisdom, there's wisdom outside the wisdom of the Greeks, which they thought they're the only wise men in the world. You know the whole concept, the philosophers have to be the kings. So what happened was that gave them a test. In fact, I'm first going to deal with the test, which is not dealt with by Rav Dessler. It is his interpretation, it's not his own. It comes from the major disciple of the Vilna Gaon, who was one of the greatest masters of solving these mysterious agadot. But I'll just give you something else which is interesting, another test, which followed the one we're going to discuss. They tested him, they said, you're so clever, build a house in the air. So what did Yeshua do? He uttered one of the names of Hashem, and by which he suspended himself between the sky and the earth. He then said to the Athenians, bring me up bricks and mortar, so I can build a house here. So they said, well, how can you want me to build without giving me the bricks to build with? Then that's another question. They said, where's the world center? So he extended his finger towards an indeterminate spot. He said to them, there. They said to him, who shall say, how can we confirm your claim? So he said to them, by measuring it with ropes and measure. Give me measuring ropes, and then you can measure the world. Now, this, just give you an example. This, I'll give you the interpretation of the Maral. You can say like this, that you can say the Mashor, the Maral, and the Gaon of Vilna, they're the ones who give deep interpretations. to build the buildings, to get its structure starting after any necessary preparations have already been completed. So, say like this: the sage has held the immortal soul, an autonomous spiritual entity, impervious to physical processes, whose existence predates that of the body, with which it is joined at birth, which survives a person after death. The Athenians propound a theory which later became the neo-Aristotelian position, that the spirit dies along with the flesh. Any true intellectual conception that one may have gained by study and contemplation lives on forever in the realm of ideas. So the Athenians asked to be sure, if a man is composed, as the Jewish sages maintain, of a soul that comes from heaven in a body fabricated from the material earth, he ought to inhabit a place midway between the two disparate points of origin. He should build his home in the air, between sky and earth. So to come to the Athenians, for sure submit in truth, man does belong between sky and earth, except the man's physical component simply cannot rise to its proper level in the cosmic order. Many other things, prevented by physical constraints from realizing fundamental nature. So this is so what is Rishua's response? I mean, they want to deny creation ex nihilo. So Rishua's response is that Hashem said, and the world came into being indeed, like a house suspended between the sky and earth. There's a pasuk. It says, Tole eretz al belima, Hashem, He hangs the earth on nothingness. The technologies of people can cut or form or rearrange existing materials. Only Hashem creates by His word and needs nothing to work with. Hu Uma Vayehi. He spoke and it came to be. So then he demonstrated further, if anything, the problem of matter derived from naught should affect the Athenians' own convictions. Although the Aristotelian philosophy asserts the eternity of matter, it also holds that matter draws its existence from an immaterial first cause. How, asked to be sure, if you cannot conceive of building in the air, do you intend to elevate bricks to that self-same air? How can matter, the fundamental bricks of which the world is built, emanate of itself from a cause completely immaterial? So this is one of the discussions that took place. But now we're going to deal with a different one. It's like this. Let me just recap that the Talmud deals with many, even you might say, aspects of extra-material existence. Generally it's dealt with certain parables and metaphors. And there's however, it has a basis in historical episodes, because we know from many other sources that in the time of the Roman, even say, government over Judea, there were many different eras and many different emperors. Some emperors were very cruel, and there were often decrees made in Rome against the Jews, both in the whole Roman Empire as well as those in Judea, which was the name then for the land of Israel. And the Romans made sure, that many times that the Jews would pay taxes and so on. So they had to have representatives. The Jews' major representative in his time was Yeshua ben Hananiah, a very clever person who also knew very many of the great leaders of the Romans, and especially he was to try to make friends with the emperor in order to protect the people. And the emperor saw he was a very wise man, and he said to him, you know, we take our wisdom, we Romans, we take it really from the Greeks. It's well known. And I see you're very wise. You seem to have the answer to all questions. So I'd like to ask you, maybe you'd be willing to go to Athens and meet with these great philosophers and discuss things with them. And I know that they don't mind having clever people from elsewhere coming along. They always think they'll come out of the debate on top. So let's see. Do you want to take the challenge? Because there's a certain problem here, that these Athenian philosophers in this time, they had a secret language, they had secret meetings. So they didn't want the meetings to be open to anyone who didn't have proper initiation and were not easy to get entrance. So they had sessions frequently of the 60 greatest philosophers of Greece who debated basic questions. And as far as I know, they don't all agree with your point of view, and the point of view of the sages of Israel, the emperor said. So, but if you're ready to go and argue with them, listen to their claims, and answer their questions, well and good. So let's see. So Schumann accepted the challenge, and he asked the emperor to provide different things to help him to get there. And in fact, it wasn't easy for him to get entrance, but he got entrance, claiming that they even saw that he seems to be a most unusually wise man. Said, okay, you can come along, but we're going to give you difficult questions. So their question was as follows. They said to him, after they saw he had been able to answer some difficult questions, please give us an empty statement that is certainly untrue, it's a lie. He said to them, okay, I'll tell you something which is a false statement. There was a mare mule that gave birth. And when the foal, it's called calf, of the mule emerged, there was a note hung around its neck on which it was written that the father's household had a liability which was the equivalent of 100,000 zuz, $1 million. So the Athenians objected and said, can a mare mule give birth? Mules are sterile, they can't have birth. So Yeshua said to them, well, you want me to give you an empty statement, a false statement, that's what I did. Another question. When salt threatens to go rancid, with what can it be salted or preserved? He said, with the afterbirth of a mare mule. So, he said, can a mare mule have an afterbirth? So let's first understand this. I'm now going to follow in this the explanation of the Gaon of Vilna. He says like this, there's a passage in Avodah Zarah, in Talmud Bavli. The Athenians are considered a development from Edom, and they demanded from another Beshua, what fiction or fraud he could deliver in Rome's assertion that they were Isaac's lawful, truly blessed heirs. In other words, did he not see how Rome proceeds from strength to strength, while Israel dwindles towards extinction? In other words, there was a claim here: which civilization contains the ultimate truth? Is it the Roman civilization, which absorbed the Greek philosophers? But in fact, their main concept in life was to make an empire governed by law and order, and building up the material world, sometimes even with violence. So who is going to create the more perfect world? Rome plus Athens, or Jerusalem and Israel, which is still part of the confrontations that take place today. So the Beshua's meaning is like this: Hashem presented Avraham with a choice. If his descendants would neglect the Torah, they would suffer exile among the nations. That's one choice for Avraham. The other choice is they'll go into Gehinnom. They won't have the future Gan Eden. Avraham chose exile because, unlike Gehinnom, exile does not mean complete eradication. Gehinnom really means that human personality ceases to exist. So Shaya, he gives strength to the people of Israel, saying, O barren woman who has not given birth, for the children of she who is desolate, that's Zion, are numerous. Zion's children have been banished. She dwells alone like a barren woman, yet she has cause to rejoice. Very barrenness ensures that she has not given birth to sons marked for Gehinnom. Their children are numerous and endure in distant lands, and will in time return. To describe the exile, the Song of Songs says, he who maintains the peace had a vineyard in Baal Hamon. He dedicated vineyard to gardens of man. The vineyard is Israel. The gardens are the other empires, the Shibud Malchut, that enslave us. Their depredations reduce our numbers, 1 out of 6. 200 is seized by the guardians. Against every 1,000 that remain alive for Hashem's service. So Avraham is responsible for exile. He will intercede with Hashem for deliverance. We are the foe. That means people think we can't have a future, but we do have a future. And it bears a promissory note to our father Avraham that guarantees the redemption, the Gula of the surviving exiles. So Athenians object. They said to him, can a mere mule give birth? Zion is completely barren. Her children will never return. Rabbi Shua says that's the fiction. And then comes the next question about the salt. We see they're interrelated. Because their question was, how would you salt which has become rotten, which has become rancid? How can you get away its rottenness? So he said to them, the afterbirth of a mare mule. So this continues the same concept. Salt is the most common preservative. It never spoils. The Athenians were unable to understand Yeshua's absurd parable. So they countered it with their own absurdity in the hope that he in turn would fail to understand their intent. And the Aaronic sack which shelters and preserves the developing fetus, that which preserves what does not exist, is fit as well to preserve what cannot rot. So Rabbi Shua replied to this, does salt ever go rancid? So this is connected with the significance of salt. We put salt on the table because the table is like the altar. And it says the altar, which is the connection between people of Israel and Hashem, through the offerings, this brings preservation to people of Israel. That Sinai Hashem made a pact with Israel. That should have been a pact always kept to, just like salt. Can't go rotten. He would grant them the land and the treasure above all the peoples, while they would serve him as the kingdom of priests and the holy nation. But Israel sinned and was banished from the land. Their pact with Hashem is annulled, said the Athenians. Oh yes, you're right, we know. They knew the Septuagint. We know what's written in the Bible, that Hashem made a pact with you. But you left that pact. I mean, this is also the development of Rome, becoming basically, in due course, a Christian civilization. Yes, you made a pact, but since you broke the pact, it no longer exists. So Rabbi Shua's reply said, he affirmed the eternity of the covenant. The Jews trace our lineage to the patriarchs and the 12 tribes. No people consider themselves direct descendants of their ancient forebears. These are the people that descend like mules that have no offspring. But with Israel, alone among nations, we are bound to pledges undertaken by our ancestors. We have a connection with them. And Hashem had them sealed as an eternal agreement. Hashem promised Abraham, and I will establish my covenant with you, Briti, you and your offspring after you, throughout their generations. Brit Olam, he calls it, a covenant forever, to be God to you and to your descendants after you. So this covenant is preserved by blameless children who are too young to be obligated by the law. You say the adults don't, many of them, different times, became sinners, but the children themselves started without sin. And many of them even started studying Torah to form a mitzvah. Small children called the afterbirth. The mare mule is Zion. To see in Salzburg, can a mare mule have an afterbirth? How can Israel bear small children for Hashem and raise them in his service when she is divorced from him? So Rabbi Shua says, and does salt go rancid? The covenant of Sinai of salt, the marriage contract between Hashem and Israel, can never be revoked. And Israel may be distant from Hashem, but she remains his wife. Her children are still taught to acknowledge their father, and she aspires in time to end her estrangement. So this is the mashal as it's brought by the Gaon of Vilna. Now the Gaon had a very great disciple who was called Chaim Volozhin. Now some of you heard of Volozhin Yeshiva, which today I visited also, it was in ruins when I visited. But the Jewish community of nearby Minsk, I think, managed to get it back from the authorities, and they made it a cultural Jewish center. I know some of the people were involved in doing this, but that's just a remnant of the Volozhin Yeshiva. But here in Israel, like many great yeshiva to the past, they built up on the name of the past yeshiva in Israel. And now if you turn to what I gave yesterday, if you don't have the sheets, you can please give them out here. So Dessler deals here with this, in a parable interpretation given by the major disciple of Vilna Gaon, who's also a great Kabbalist, and the yeshiva of Volozhin is considered really the father of yeshivot of the modern period, because they only allowed people to join that yeshiva who had a very high level of intelligence and dedication to Torah, and also great motivation to improve their character. And they had their Seder in the yeshiva non-stop, or they had shifts to some people. Because, the average Seder for many of them was included tefillot as well, for 16 hours. And the rest of the time they had to sleep and also the meals. And otherwise it was solid learning and tefillah. But they divided the times so that the yeshiva should always be in action. So Rabbi Chaim Volozhin says like this: what was this question of the sages of Athens to Yeshua ben Hananiah? And now this is the second paragraph down. Matzati b'Roshot Rabbi Chaim Volozhin. He said like this: when salt goes sour, when it goes rotten, how would you salt it? Which means, what brings about the galut, the bitterness of life for the individual and for Am Yisrael? It's the sins. But when we're in galut and we suffer, the suffering itself leads to more sins. There are two types. There's a galut that you don't really suffer, but then the affluence and the ease cause you to forget the Torah. So it's a galut ruchani, it's a spiritual galut. So we have troubles both from the physical aspect, and for a great section of Jewry, if the physical situation is too difficult, they lose their faith, so they sin more. And it's generally a minority who can pass these tests. And the test of being living amongst the nations, of assimilation, of giving into the easier aspects of the lifestyle of the nation of the world, corrupts us. So therefore, the galut itself, which is the salt, is producing evil, sinfulness. And the sinfulness just produces a lecture of the galut. So how can you cure the evils of the galut? What hope is there? As it says in the Chumash, when you go in galut, Vadasham Elohim, there you will serve their gods. Masei de Adam, made by human beings. Eitz va'evan, it says. In fact, if you make these days, people analyze the text, as you know, by the Bible code. So in these verses, according to the Bible code, there's a mention of Jesus and Muhammad, and it says Eitz va'evan. And Eitz is considered the cross, the holy cross, and the Evan is considered the holy stone of Mecca, which they've now transferred or added to it, the holy stone and on the Temple Mount. But the holy stone in the Quran is the holy stone of Mecca. So it says, what hope can there be that there'll be a real atonement for people in the end? And the truth is today as well, you study the future of Jewry. There's a small minority that's able to survive, and it's able even sometimes to increase, go up and down. But the enormous tide of assimilation and giving up Israel from Jews, giving up Jewish values, and giving up all aspects of Judaism. What hope is there really from someone who surveys human history from, let's say, from a not from the Torah angle, what's going to be the future? So Rabbi Shimon Chanya answers, the future will be with the afterbirth that comes from the mule. But a mule can't have children, it can't have calves, there's no afterbirth either. There's another, so he said to them, okay, well, does salt ever go rotten? It can't go rotten. So he said like this, what is the significance of the afterbirth of the mule? This is a reference to what it says in the prophets, where Zion is referred to as the barren woman who can't have children. Roni akara lo yalada. One of the haftarot we read these weeks is sing, you barren woman who can't have children, who's got no future. In the eyes of the nations of the world, you've got no future. But you should sing. That's Sion. But then there's described the birth pangs. It says, the Mashiach, why should you sing? Mashiach is going to come, you're going to have birth pangs. If you can't have children, got no womb even or something, how can you have birth pangs? But you can have birth pangs. Chavle Leda prove that you're not really barren. If you've got birth pangs, then you're not chronically barren, not organically barren. And this is the answer. Just like salt can never go rotten, and that's the concept, or it says in the Chumash of Brit Melach, Olam, the eternal covenant with Hashem will never be broken. It's a covenant between Kodesh Baruch and Klal Yisrael. They will not disappear. Even if Am Yisrael do not do Teshuvah, what will happen? HaKadosh Baruch Hu will bring for them a tyrant whose decrees are as difficult as Haman, and then they will do Teshuvah. You know, that's the concept of Elul through which we go. That's the concept that we described now already before of all the prophets. Just like the day is darkest before the dawn, the birth pangs of a woman are most painful just before the birth, so also when things seem hopeless from the aspect without taking notice of the prophets and the word of Hashem, we think it's finished, no future at all. Certainly during the Holocaust there's a story which one person who was left in the Warsaw Ghetto. In the Warsaw Ghetto, when the Nazis destroyed it, they tried to rake out every ditch and every place with their dogs to kill every Jew. And they achieved it. There's no Jew left. It was entirely Judenrein. And what the aim was to make the whole earth Judenrein, which is really what Haman wanted. Haman, let's get rid of these Jews. Why should the Jews still go on existing? Why should they be able to make a family tree? We've got to get rid of them. This is the irrational anti-Semitism which has existed from the birth of the people of Israel until today. And it keeps on reviving. I mean, everyone thought after the Holocaust it's the end of anti-Semitism. Today, it's terrible. What's going on? It's unbelievable. So, let's continue. But the Jews still carry on living. Still manage it. And what does it say? It's something that they want to chew by themselves. So I'll tell you about this person. He lived, I think for a year or so, he lived in the sewers. So nobody could remain alive. And he reported afterwards it was a terrible, most terrible existence. But what kept him going was he thought, if this is what the Nazis have done here, and knew what they were doing in the gas chambers, so there's no Jews left probably. Because I can see if even the partisans and others they had no power against the Nazis. So it's finished. And their plan is to all over the world. They also knew that even in Palestine, which was a bit of a hope, they knew where was the destructive personality of Palestine, who made massacres even before Hitler came to power. When Yeshiva and killed most of the Yeshiva Bochum, when they were living peacefully with the Arabs in Hebron, and in Jerusalem, the same thing. He was situated in Berlin, was a constant partner with Hitler. And they knew this. They knew all over the world, but in Russia, everywhere, Jews just being killed. So there's no Jew left, only me. He said, I'm probably the last Jew. He said that's what kept him going. Otherwise he would have just, what he said, I don't want to say it. It's so grotesque, it's a description that makes a person sick, even to, it's actually mentioned in the Torah how what might happen. But when you know that actually it did happen, and you read the records of it, it's too shocking to even quote. But that kept him going. The only Jew left. Because that's how it looked like. But Baruch Hashem, we've continued. But this does not apply just to the nation of Israel. Because the individual also goes through periods of Geula and Galut. So it says, like you mentioned before, of Dessler, now applies this moral lesson that we know Hashem made an eternal covenant and will not forsake the Jewish people. Maybe be a small minority, maybe, we don't know. All depends how much teshuvah we do. And we, of course, we appealed to Hashem and said, we already had tyrants crueler than Haman. Yeah. But also wanted to, actually the manifesto of Hitler was based on the manifesto of Haman, via the Mufti of Jerusalem. And their plan was, every Jew, wherever he's in the world, has to be destroyed. Because they're the enemies of the Aryan race. They're the enemies, or we consider the truth, destroyed. So this is the situation for Am Yisrael. And when it's at the end, the pains are worse, but we're not barren. Zion is alive. Zavroni akoro lo yolodo is a reference to Zion. So the hint, now I'll just say this last part, the hint of this is that through you, Shmo Lamazeh, the truth is, a person, and this is what really kept the Jews alive. And perhaps it was not so easy for others to understand it at that time. Today it's much easier. Because what kept them alive, they say this world is a testing ground. We're tested here. But the true world is the spiritual world. And if you carry with your spirit, you will live forever. But if you leave your spirit, that's the end. And I go back, perhaps I've quoted this before, but I want to quote it again. We're having as our guest speaker, Yossi Balas, who's the head of Arachim. Himself, an example of a Baal Teshuvah, who is really fulfilling enormous potential was given to him. So he traced his ancestry, where his name come from, in a lot of wallets all over the world. And he even had a bit of a tradition that maybe his grandparents really came originally from the Moranos. And it came about a couple of years ago that in Spain, they decided to do teshuvah. And they said they will even give Spanish citizenship with the passport and everything to anyone whose ancestors were in Spain in time of the Inquisition. And either they suffered there, and they're killed there, or if they remain as Marranos, as so many did all over the world, that means hidden Jews, so they should go and make a claim. They also uncovered all the archives of the Inquisition. And someone went through them, especially to do with Jewish people, Marranos, and he found 1,000 pages of description of the Wallis family. And it turns out that the last who were committed in auto da fe, that means that public burning, and didn't give in to the constant requests of the Christian church, even whilst they were starting to burn them, maybe you'll do teshuvah and go back to Christianity. They stopped it. Anyway, the last three were members of the family, or one of them was a student of Raphael Wallis. A detailed description of everything. So he made an investigation, and turned out that a lot of his family Wallis were Marranos in Majorca, which was under the Spanish Inquisition, and had a full record of everything, what happened to them. It turned out lots of the Marranos had the name also of Wallis, of the same family. Anyway, there's a description there of the burning, how they burnt them, how they tortured them each stage, the Inquisition rule, methods of torture to get them to admit to Christianity and give up their Judaism. And even when they were taking them to be burnt up, every few yards a priest came up to them and said, up the way they're being tortured and so on, maybe you'd give in. They just had to put up your hand. They couldn't speak anymore, something because of the flame. Put up your hand that you want them to stop the torture. So because they roasted them bit by bit. Anyway, this Raphael Wallis was there with his niece, who was also like a student of him, and somebody else, a student of his, because they're not teaching Torah in secret, and other things, other crimes that he did. So this Raphael Wallis, it was so terrible, the pain, when he was being burnt, his skin was being burnt bit by bit, and so he came to a certain place, just to put up his hand, they said, oh, maybe, so they said, we'll give you a chance to repent. So you just say you're repenting, you're going back to Christianity, and then we'll take you back, you won't be burned to death. So his niece called out, she said, they're only burning our bodies, which are just clothes. They cannot burn our soul. She screamed that out loud, so he put his hand down. He got burnt. And that's what Jews in the Holocaust believed as well. I mean, there's survivors of some of those who have been pushed into the gas chamber, some of the capos, and that's why they survived. And they said the vast majority of the Jews who could say anything, they went into the gas chamber saying Shema Yisrael. There's even a case on I think it's Silverstone, and they started singing and dancing. That's why they got pushed into the gas chambers. The Jews knew the soul cannot be burnt. The soul remains forever. And that is what preserved them. And many of them. Because the soul of Am Yisrael has continued. And even though they went into death, but they believed clearly the soul goes on. And today, there are many people who are sick, clinically dead, they go to heaven, and they think the soul continues. They come back to them as the story. So today we've got proof from scientific investigation that the soul cannot be burnt. If a person has destroyed his soul, that's something else. If you destroy it willingly throughout life, you don't take any notice of your conscience. Then who knows what happens? Then Gehinnom is defined by many of these deeper thinkers as non-existence. So let us all, therefore, this teaching of each one of us is, we can, the inner, I've just said last week, a person, the Golos often uncovers the inner soul of the people. And he also says in the Chumash, I will not despise them, I will not destroy them utterly, with the concept of Geula. And in the end, the Galot brings to Teshuvah. To each person also in his life who's got difficulties, they can bring you to repentance. And for that whole Am Yisrael, it'll also bring Yetzer Hashem in our time to true Teshuvah, which produces the fantastic Geula. So, time for one question.